Good afternoon and welcome to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM. Each week, I invite an expert from the world of business to share their knowledge, insights, and tips to help you with your business challenges. If there's a topic you would like covered, or if you feel you can make a contribution, please email me at yourbusiness@dublincityfm.ie, and perhaps we'll be having a chat here one day soon. My guest today is the managing director at iPing, a company he founded back in 2005. He's been in the IT industry for almost 30 years, and he's an avid networker and a member of Dublin Chamber of Commerce Business Network International, and is also past president of Junior Chambers International Ireland. I'm delighted to welcome Mark Kelly to the Junior Business Studio. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Alec, pleasure to be
Yeah,
on
great,
here with
great to
you.
have you. And technology, what a great topic to be talking about. My goodness me, I'm sure where would we be without it? But let's get back. I'm going to ask you that sort of awkward question about last year's in school and what was on your sort of mind. But I think there was a family business running in the background that was going to partially influence it and then send you on a different trajectory. So just talk about that, you coming up to your last year in school and then what you decided you were going to do then.
Thanks a lot there, Alec. Yeah, I grew up in a house that was, I guess my dad was a teacher, but my mum and dad also ran a B&B. So from my formative years was dealing with tourists from places like America, Germany, Spain, and, having to answer phones and check people in and deal with customers and really, having to deal with customers and customer service. So little did I know, 20 years after that there, that I'd be working in a customer service industry, and the ability to answer phones and stuff like that there would be very important. But my last year in school, I was, in the process of getting ready to, set forth and spread my wings, and was filling out CAO forms and really focused on computer courses. So I'd, options for computer courses in some in the UK, some in Northern Ireland, Limerick, Dublin, different places like that. So I was focusing on getting a good
Yeah.
leaving cert and getting some getting off to study computers in somewhere like that there. Yeah, that was what I was focusing on then.
Um, okay, two things came in there. A great ability. This often happens to people who are part of an entrepreneurial family. They get thrown into customer service and you start learning a lot about it on the ground, which is
Yeah.
a good place to have it because once you learn it, it sticks with you for the rest of your life. Um, and the second thing is, why computers? What was attracting you towards computers?
So we always had computers in our house. I know from, just with ZX Sprinklers, Commodore 64s, so we had a lot of computers growing up, whether it was computer gaming or, programming in different languages. We would have been doing that there since, 6 or 7. So that was always something that I've been focused on and had a lot of interest in. Um, Also had my brother. He was a teacher, but he was doing a master's in computers at the time in McGee, which is University of Ulster in Derry. So I guess I would have been influenced by that. He seemed to be learning a lot of good stuff and changing the world. So yeah, that would have been the two main things that drew me towards computers at the time.
Certainly, you were about to enter into a world that was going to expand exponentially. We couldn't have guessed where it was going to go, but obviously you saw it. But you needed an interest in it. So you were going to obviously learn about that. That meant probably going to university or something, did it?
Yeah, so first year of college, I was in University of Ulster in that campus in Jordanstown. And as you say, that it was like the Wild West in computing then. I remember sitting in the computer labs with 10 or 15 other guys, and this is when you could have, if you had a few quid in a credit card, you could have bought yourself a 3-letter domain name, and be worth millions and stuff, like billions and stuff like that now. So yeah, it was really was interesting times, and stuff was changing. Websites were just popping up left, right, and center, and this is before Google. This is before there was websites like that. So it was just changed every day. It was changing. So it was really interesting times.
Yes, and you're correct. I mean, if we were to go back in time to those days and just register as many three-letter websites as you could, you'd be worth a fortune
Oh,
today.
I've those regrets every evening. So I do the what ifs and the could have beens.
Ah, well, it's water under the bridge. Listen, if we were all that wise, we'd all be millionaires. But
Yeah.
but it was an interesting time. I mean, there we are. And people, let's talk about people sort of in terms of websites. I mean, you're interested, you're able to set them up, and we're at the very sort of infancy of websites. And why? What was the sort of motivation for people setting them up? What was their expectation setting up a website?
Yeah, I think back then a lot of the websites were just set up as, I think it was even before the brochure websites where people would have been putting up things like, technical documents, and people would be getting stuff like that, or maybe contact pages. A lot of stuff would be between departments, so maybe in universities that have websites for projects, things like that. And it was sort of getting to the stage where the bigger companies were setting up websites. There was not a chance that the local Chinese was having a website or anything like that there. It was the
Mm.
Cisco's, the Microsofts, the media places, maybe the big American media houses that were having the websites, that kind of stuff. Would have been a lot of the stuff that would have been there. So for the websites and all.
There must
And
have been a lot of discussion. I mean, you thinking about it for you. Gosh, where can this go? I suppose the world is your oyster at this stage, and you're kind of thinking, how could we use this? You know?
yeah, and the it was, I guess, being such an early time, if you were to go back now, if you sort of knew what you knew now and go
Mm.
back, and that the things that you would be able to take advantage of that. But then I guess first year in college, you're sort of exposing yourself and sort of learning the new experiences and finding out the things that you didn't even know. Like, it's a big thing that comes into, like, life, I guess, is the unknown unknowns, and it's just even
Yes.
finding out some things that you didn't even think existed, and just blow your mind kind of stuff that
Mm.
being able to. We would have spent time, and a lot of time, doing stuff on a program called IRC, which was Internet Relay Chat, where you could sort of pop onto that and you could talk to people, in America, Japan, and just something as simple as that there blew my mind, that by just hooking onto a program that ran over the internet, you were able to make friends and communicate with people, to
Wow.
pretty much everywhere on the planet. And from a boy from Donegal ending up in university, knowing something like that there existed, not even knowing something like that there
Yeah,
existed.
yeah, exactly.
You know.
Yeah. But again, you finished college and you're going to go into the workforce. Where was your sort of starting point there?
So yeah, as part of the degree that I did in University of Ulster, it was a sandwich degree. So there was a 1 year placement, diploma in industrial studies, it was called, that was put in between it, and something excellent. Like any of your listeners that are sort of thinking about picking, college courses and things like that, and something that, like, I can't more highly recommend is getting a bit of real experience in your course. So that there was sort of what helped me pick, or chart the rest of my life. I
Sure.
spent a year in a large accountancy firm in Belfast, BDO Stoy Hayward. They're BDO, part of the BDO group,
Yes.
the big accountancy firm, and I was sort of part of the IT team there, looking after a lot of uh, PCs, servers in their organization. And it was right at the beginning of when the internet was taking off for, small, medium-sized companies in and around Belfast. Like, they would have, whenever I started, they would have just been getting to the stage where they were going to get online, sending emails. They used a program called Lotus Notes for sending email. Lotus Notes dialed up sort of a few times during the day and sent all the emails that had built up on the server out, and went and grabbed the other emails and brought them back in. And we sort of ran the project that year to get internet access for the marketing department, so that they could sort of go on and do research of companies and different things where they could go on and get the internet connection. Before that, it was just email access, and we gave internet access to all the people around the office. And sort of the case of whenever someone was looking for access at the beginning, you had to switch on the modem, dial it up, and let them get access. So yeah, like things that you sort of take for granted now for internet
Ah,
on your phone and everything. Like, they had a 56 kilobyte modem that would have been connecting and downloading web pages, and they would sort of chunk down. The page would load in
oh, I
sections, so it
know.
would. So
And I tell you what, I think most of us will go to our grave with that modem sound in our
Yeah,
mind,
yeah,
just thinking, is it ever going to end?
yeah. I remember
Anyway,
spending a day. I remember spending a day working in BDO, and one of the accountants, one of the partners, I think it was the audit partner, he'd come in and he was going mad, saying that the date was wrong in the fax, and I had to spend a day fixing the date and time on a fax, and this was just around the time when faxes were being sort of phased out and email was
yeah.
coming in, and there's people going, oh, here what do you mean you're using email? The email is just for like chatting to your college mates. That's never going to pick up, it's never going to take off, so it's not the yeah, well, that didn't age too well, but yeah, having to set time and date on fax, I think I still have nightmares about it from going through
Yeah.
all the
And if
menus.
you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is Mark Kelly of iPing. All right, so you've moved on, yeah. You've come out of that, and you're heading south. You're going to come to Dublin.
Yeah, so finished college, got my degree, ended up in Dublin in 1999, just as the millennium was kicking off, and they had a clock that they were putting into the Liffey that was going to be revolutionary, that people could look down, and yet nobody's seen it. I think there was a bit of slime in the area, but apart
Wasn't it
from that,
that, well, Dublin was always well known for coming up with these sort of phrases, and wasn't it called the time and the slime?
yeah, the time with the slimes, that was one of the first things that I remember. There was the spire, and there was later on, but the time and the slime. So yeah, I remember that. I got a lot of chuckles out of that there.
We
So I did.
did, but that cost a fortune, and it was again somebody just hadn't worked out what might actually happen here with this thing.
Yeah.
But what would have been more concern for you coming down 1999? Hadn't we got this 2000 and the end of the world
Yeah.
as we crossed into the new millennium?
The Y2K, that was big. Whenever I was in BDO, the Y2K, I spent it was at two or three big conferences that we went and looked at getting things. And a lot of the time in my year at BDO was patching machines and making sure that everything wasn't going to grind to a halt. And I remember going out for or techie lads night out up in Belfast. We all met up for the Y2K, and we were sort of watching TV and wondering if the world was going to stop and the Russian nukes were going to start flying and stuff like that. And it was a bit of a damp squid, so it was nothing really
Well, I'm
nothing
glad
really
it was.
happened.
I mean, if your
Yeah,
expectation was Russian nuclear, I think
yeah.
I'm glad it was a damn squib, you know?
Yeah, but I think with I think Tony Blair and everything, any of the experts in the governments will say that because there was so much money spent and there was so much planning in place and there was so much awareness of it that everything was addressed. I'd be interested to know what would have happened if nobody had done nothing. Would it have?
I think the answer would have been nothing, because
We'll
there was
we'll
a lot
never
of us
know.
who couldn't do anything.
Yeah,
So we, like, apart from maybe backing up information, there was nothing we could do.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So
Well, but anyway, you're back. We got over it. We got over the Y2K. So you're into Dublin now, and you got involved in a cable company.
yeah, so I first job out of college was working for a company in Belfast that was looking after cable modems. And if anybody's got a Virgin Media cable modem in their house at the minute, I worked for the first company that put internet over cable modems. So they had customers, they had a TV network in Swords and Malahide, and then
Mm.
they brought in the cable modem network for Swords and Malahide. So I helped administer that and set up internet sites and web hosting for a lot of small, medium-sized businesses in and around Swords and Malahide. So yeah, that was good experience.
It's funny you should say that. Only last week we had the ESB in here and going into this box that we have to replace with the new um, meters.
Yeah.
And what do they find in there but an old modem? So
Yeah, they're floating around everywhere, so they're floating around
yeah,
everywhere.
they're there. All right, so you're going to spend a couple of years getting involved in cable TV, and then I mean there was a lot of sort of buyouts and things happening. So you would have moved through that.
Yeah, a lot of consolidation, and I ended up working for internet provider, an internet company called Chorus, or not for called Chorus, called Internet Ireland. And I don't know if you remember Internet Ireland. They brought out the set-top TV box, probably around 2001 or two, where you get this small box, maybe the size of you know, an Xbox or something like that, and you plugged it
Hmm.
into your telephone line, and then you plugged it into your television, and you could get web browsing, and you could get email on your television. So that was sort of their big gig on the customer end, and I worked on the sort of the business end, where they sort of did support for small medium businesses, gave them email, gave them broadband, gave them websites. So yeah, that was, I was working on that and having to deal with a lot of small medium sized companies around Dublin and sort of help them out with getting their internet side of things. They usually had somebody else looking after their PCs and that kind of stuff, but we looked after their internet communication needs.
Were you involved in websites at the time?
So just from a technical end, if someone was looking to do the design part of the website stuff, that wasn't something that I would have helped with. But if they were looking to get the web hosting set up, get the email set up, all that stuff, I would sort of do the back end side of that, sort of the techie part of that, as opposed to the design part of that. My flair for graphical and all things just creative, not my forte, so it's not.
No, no, it's fine. All right, so you're doing all of that, and but you have a yearning to travel.
Yeah. So after that, finished up in Internet Ireland and had a yearning to travel. So took a year out and went traveling around, Europe, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe. It pretty much did a full circle of Europe and got to see the sites, visit the Acropolis down in Nuremberg, places like that there. So yeah, places that I sort of would have heard about in history growing up. It was nice to sort of get the tour and meet people and see what's going on in the world.
Yeah, it's great, and of course you would have been into Europe and Eastern Europe. You mentioned to me as well. Must have been interesting to see the sort of, while it hadn't transitioned into the West type, but you would have seen some of the the residue of the Cold War era in that.
Yeah, so I would have, I remember being over in places like, in Krakow,
Hmm.
and we went back there later, probably maybe about 10 or 12 years later, with to go see Ireland. We're playing football over that area, so we went over to see the football over there. And I was just surprised, in relation to how much the infrastructure had changed there in that time. But like I
Hmm.
guess it happened here in Ireland when we joined the old EEC and then the EU, that how the infrastructure built up, the roads, dual carriageways, the
Yes.
tunnels, similar sorts of things. They had a lot of the infrastructure really built up there, and you could really see how the world had changed and how it had become more westernized for sure.
Yeah, all right. A great experience to travel and meet people and do all of those things. But then you're going to come back and work. So where did you come back to work?
Yeah, so came back and I got a job working for Dell in Cherrywood, and they were setting up their expert center there in Cherrywood to provide expert level support for large corporates and large they're large businesses from Europe and Middle East, the EMEA. So I got a job working there for Dell, providing support for the big clients.
Yeah, fantastic. And how did you find that? I mean, you're dealing with an international company, and certainly Dell were one of the ones that were growing fairly rapidly at the time.
Yeah, it was a great experience working for Dell. Just the to work for a really big company, was different in a lot of ways to having worked for a small indigenous Irish company. So it was so I really learned a lot from that there, and just even the processes, the things you got to have in place for a big, well-oiled machine to work. It was a real eye opener.
Yeah, it is. And it's amazing. A lot of people don't recognize at the time when they're working for large organizations that the infrastructure that's in place and what it took to put it in and then to retain it, and
Yeah,
how you can kind of pillage some of that and take it for yourself at some
yeah, for sure.
later stage, you know. So, okay, you were with Dell for a couple of years. And then you were going to set up your own business. That's always a challenge. I mean, what was the motivation for you to sort of set up your own business?
Yeah, well, I've always had a an interest in business and doing my own thing. So I have like but back when I was doing my leaving cert, I studied business as part of my leaving cert, and it wasn't the school that I went to. Girls had the option to do business studies, but the way that the timetable worked, boys didn't have the option to do business studies. So I like studied that myself as part of it and did it myself in the Leaving Cert. So it's always something that I've wanted to do. And I guess maybe coming from the old B&B background and seeing the entrepreneurial skills involved in that there, I decided that I'd sort of like to put out my own shingle and give that another rattle and see how that went. And sort of seeing how businesses, the kind of support that a large organization like Dell can bring to large organizations. Back then, I sort of had the idea that, maybe being able to bring something similar to small, medium-sized organizations, around Dublin, surrounding areas, that there was a real opportunity for that there. So that's what I sort of decided that, that could be a good thing to go out there and try and do.
And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is Mark Kelly, Managing Director of iPing. And we're just talking about sort of setting up your own business. Okay, you've worked in the corporate world, you've learned some of the things, plus you had the entrepreneurial flair. What do you think probably would have been the biggest challenges just starting off your own business?
It's capital, working capital. So, you've got to pay the bills, and you're either going to go and take on debt. If you can get a bank manager back then, it'll give you a few quid, or you've got to have friends and family that have money, or you've got to have money saved up. So the big challenge in starting off is, how you're going to fend for yourself until you get those first, 10 customers or whatever number of customers that you need to get to sort of start to cover the cost.
And in terms of that, what sort of services were you offering, and how's that changed to what you're offering today?
So services would have been, back then it would have been a lot of PCs. People would be, getting a lot of PCs, getting PCs set up. A lot of stuff was in-house email servers. So people would have been, having, an Exchange server in-house, or they might have been dealing with, they might have had a BlackBerry server as well. So everything was in-house, and it seems to sort of be a recurring theme in IT that, everything gets centralized and then everything gets decentralized. And what I mean by that is, back in the 60s, there was mainframes and everything was sort of centralized. Then it sort of went to the PC world, and everything went to the PCs and servers in people's houses, or not in houses, in their offices. And now we're in a centralized part again, where everything's in Amazon or Google or AWS. So back then, everything was in people's offices. So they had their, they didn't have their email server on site. They had their file and print server on site. So everything was on site. And it was a dream of people to think that they could have had all this stuff like they do now on their phone or on their, in the cloud, and not need,
of course. I mean, the real challenge for business back then, I do remember it, when something happened and went wrong, it certainly went wrong.
Yeah, if you have everything, like a lot of businesses would have had a small business server, a Microsoft small business server, and that would have had email, file and print services. Some people might have been using it for our web server. And if that went down, everything went down, and after that there, the whole key for us anyhow to try and give a better service to people was try to decouple these things off the one single point of failure. Because, if everything was running from the same point, and you've got a problem with that, as you said, when things went down, they really went down.
I suppose in about the last 3 minutes we've got, and believe it or not, that's how quick this all happens. Tell me what you're offering today that is kind of different to what it was back then, and looking into the future, where do you see the business?
So, like the offering that we're offering people at the minute, we're a managed service for small, medium-sized businesses. And when you think about that there, if you've worked in a big company and you've had an IT department, you phone the IT department. But so what we're doing is we're the IT department for companies that, either don't have a big enough headcount for an IT department, or don't need the hassle that involved in setting up an IT department and managing it. And then we'll look after all IT requirements, whether it's, email, file sharing, security, securing the emails, securing internet connections. And then we're sort of trying to as much focus on putting things into the cloud so that there's not a single points of failure, so that people are able to, work smarter and work more intelligent.
I suppose there's two things just of importance that we can talk about for the last couple of minutes. Number one is that I presume a lot of the work you can do now, you can do remotely rather than having to go into the premises. That's
Yeah.
just number one. And secondly, maybe just comments about the increasing security threat around the internet.
Yeah, like a big thing with around COVID, before COVID, it probably was 60-40 that, 60% of our work was on site, 40% was remote. When COVID came, by necessity, that, switched, and it went 70-30, that,
Yeah.
70% of our work was remote, 30% on site. So yeah, 100% that we had to do that. And in relation to security, security is everything these days, that, and you have to at least be doing, the bare minimum that you can be doing to make sure that you're looking out for yourself, making sure you've got good firewalls in place in your business to secure things up, making sure you've got your antivirus. Super important to make sure you've got your staff trained, staff awareness. So many times people have got all the things in place, all the security in place, and then, staff member does something that, if they had a little bit of training, they would have known, that there looks a bit dodgy, or that telephone call, I shouldn't be, doing that. So really important to get a good bit of staff training to sort of tie all your security endeavors in place.
Just before we finish, perhaps you might tell people where they can find out more about you and iPing.
Yeah, so iPing website, www.iping.ie, or in Google, stick in the old iPing in Google, and we should hopefully pop up there number one.
Right. I suppose you've identified something there, and just what I'll do is to kind of finish this off and just mention, you talked about security and making sure people have all of their secure protocols in place, and I presume you do all of that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
do you also provide the training for staff as well? Because I think that's a very important part that a lot of organizations are not responding to.
So we don't do the training ourselves, as in we sort of partner up with companies that are better at training than us. So yeah, we recommend, and we've got people that we deal with, and whether there's two roads in the training. It's either, online training, or in-house, where you get the actual people to go on site. And we've recommended, we've people that we deal with that do both of those, and yeah, both are, you're both are really good, and should be done.
Okay, I think that's a great tip in which to finish on. Listen, special thanks to our guest today, Mark Kelly, for coming into the You and Your Business studio. Thanks also to Stephen on sound. The podcast today show will be available on dublincityfm.ie from tomorrow. Thank you for your company. And please remember to join me, Alec Drew, again next week at the same time, 1 o'clock, right here on 103.2 Dublin City FM for another edition of You and Your Business.